Oh, hello. Can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go.
Okay, good. How are you?
Good. Appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, of course. Where are you?
Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay. This is funny. I was supposed to be in Arizona this week, actually.
Oh,
You could have
really?
done it live.
Dang.
Yeah.
Which part of Arizona were you going to?
Sedona.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Dang. I'm sorry you missed that. What happened?
Oh, it just didn't work out, just like timing wise. I was gonna visit a friend and it just didn't work out.
Bummer. Yeah, because Sedona's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually really like looking forward to going. What is that? Is it the is it Grand Canyon? Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's not too far
Not too far,
from
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like this big, I can't remember what it was, but I saw on like some video and they're like, we're in Sedona. And I was like, oh my God, I need to go there. It just looked amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, just the red rocks, the scenery, but just like, I don't know, something about the energy with that place, like kind of the spirituality and everything. It's just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
So,
really excited about going. I'll definitely go. I'll just, whenever my schedule allows for it.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
cool. And then, so where are you? Are you Canada
I'm
these days or?
currently in
Okay.
Vancouver. I'm sort of like in between here and Sydney, which is ridiculous, but yeah.
Yeah, that seems a little brutal to be bouncing back and forth between those two places.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Like people are always like, "Oh, that's such a great life." I'm like, "Do you think about the logistics of it? It's like it's kind of hard." I love Sydney. Sydney's home to me, but I can't live there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha. Cool. Well, you're making it work and changing lives
yeah.
along the way.
trying to. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So what we'll do is, I'll have you just introduce yourself. So I like to start off with that. I think it grabs listeners. I don't know what it is about it, but it works. So it's really your chance to say, like, hey, it's Maria Ayne, and whatever like one main piece is that you feel is captivating, and excited to share about, and then whatever it is that you feel is going to also help plug you to the best ability. And then we'll cut there. I'll do an intro that goes in between once we circle back, like with the highlights, so it pulls people in even more. So once whatever comes out in the podcast, and so then we'll just record basically going through kind of the questions, unless there's other stuff that you've thought about that you're like, I feel like this needs to talked about, touched on, etc.
I'm pretty chill. Like I did look at the questions when you sent them to me, but like that was the last time I looked at them. I sort of like things to just flow. So whatever ends up happening, ends up happening.
That works out best. So
yeah, I always think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just like to ask in case people had something that they specifically want to share. So
That's lovely. Thank you.
very cool. And then towards the end, I'll basically ask, where can people find you? So that'll be like, whatever handles, Instagram or whatever channels you feel are ideal. And then the book, of course. And then it'll just be that last question: what do you believe it takes to truly transform? And sometimes that's just a recap for peeps. So, so yeah,
Okay.
cool.
Wonderful.
All right, sweet. So then, let me hit record. Cool. So that's recording. So then, let's hit a little intro.
I'm Maria. I go by Nutritionist Maria in the cyberspace world, but I am a nutritionist and a behavior specialist who helps people with a relationship with food, with a destructive relationship with food. So I sort of help people, anyone who has any sort of tension with food or destructive eating habits, I help them heal in a holistic way. And I'm really passionate about using new scientific findings and old spiritual teachings and combining them to help people heal from the root of the problem, and to be released from the paradigm that they're currently trapped in.
That is good. All right, cool. I'm like, I'll sign up. I'm like, science plus the emotion, get to the root, and I can actually heal. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, sweet.
I'm really passionate about what I do.
Awesome. I love it. All right, so that'll be intro. That's good. And record one more time. And now we're up and running. Well, Maria, I do greatly appreciate you being here. Super excited. You're an influential person in the space, and I love that you get to the heart and the root. So before we even really get started, I want to know kind of some back history, some story about how you fell in love with nutrition, but also on the emotional side of the journey and kind of where those met. Because so often, myself, it's like, oh, learn everything about nutrition and you'll have all the answers. And then you learn a ton about nutrition and you realize you have almost zero answers from the behavioral psych standpoint of things with actually implementing change. So I want to know how it came to be for you.
Yeah. I love that you said, how did you come to love nutrition? Because I actually do love nutrition now, but that's not how I started. I think I started more with the mindset of wanting to control and to know everything that I could know so that I could deal with specific problems that I was dealing with. And it was less about loving food and loving nature and more about what I wanted and how I thought things ought to be and how I could control my diet in such a way that I could manifest what I wanted. And then along that journey, I started to realize that I love nature and I love food, and that this whole journey was happening to me, and all the struggles were happening to me for a reason. And yeah, it's actually really interesting because a lot of what I do is being a voice for food, and obviously helping someone amend their relationship with food is helping them see food in a different way. And I think, culturally, we have a real issue with the way that we see food currently, I think. So it was kind of more of a journey of like, first it was control, and then it was surrender, and then it was love, and then it just,
Classic hero's journey here, right? Like,
I guess so, yeah.
I'm curious, not to take it too far down this rabbit hole, but you said controlling food. Was that really what you were trying to control, or was that what was at the surface and there was something else you were trying to control or manipulate?
That's a really great question. I'm just trying to make sure I answer it honestly. I think, well, I think a little bit of both. Definitely on the surface, it was wanting to control my diet and to be as healthy as possible, so that I could be as vibrant as possible, so that I could be as superhuman as possible, so that I could be confident, so that I could be, like, obviously, and just like everyone's relationship with food, there's all these layers, right? And everyone's always looking at the top layer, and it's like, well, why am I, stuck in these behavioral patterns? But of course, there's always all of these layers underneath there. So that's actually a really good question. And there was definitely a lot under there. Definitely.
Yeah. So it was coming from a positive place of like wanting to ultimately be as healthy as possible, but it was probably also feeding the ego, so to speak, to present to the world like as the best version of you.
Yeah, I guess so. Like the way that my relationship with food took a drastic turn for the worse was because I obviously at some point didn't think I was good enough as I was, that I had to have such control over something. And I somewhere down the line downloaded the belief that if I only was as vibrant and healthy as possible, then that would be the solution to all of these problems, I guess. And then, obviously along that journey, I realized like, okay, that is just some false idea that I downloaded, and there was, tons of work to do with that as well. So great question. I almost think you could probably do what I do.
No, I just thought it was interesting that you were talking about that, and so often, and I know like, with certain clients and stuff like that, where it's this building of I'll be happy when, this, then this, cause and effect. And it's not, you're taking yourself into that new job. You're taking yourself into that new relationship. You're also taking yourself into that new body, even if it is a few pounds lighter. And so it's not this like, I'm going to be happy here. So it struck me that self-esteem aspect is probably so critical.
It's not very common knowledge that we have an emotional set point. So the way that the emotions that we practice the most over the course of our lives actually start to become background noise, and we don't even realize that they're there anymore, and they are just part of the emotional set point. And not only do our thoughts drive our emotions, but our emotions then also drive our thoughts, which then gets us stuck in this habitual loop. And, if it influences what we end up seeing, how we end up behaving with other people, how people react to us. So it all just becomes, self-fulfilling prophecies and just, a downward spiral in that direction. But you don't even realize that the emotions are there because they've been there for as long as you can remember, right? And so, I think a lot of the times when it comes to an unhealthy relationship with food, people don't realize what the problem is because the problem has been there for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That emotional set point piece, like, that's why I just was like, my face drastically changed. Because I mean, we know that there's, set points for where the body likes to hold on and just live in homeostasis with weight and whatnot. But I've never heard it from an emotional kind of IQ standpoint. That's that was absolutely brilliant. And
by the time you reach 35, everything is basically everything that you're thinking, everything that you're doing, everything that you're feeling, it's all just part of the body's circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
It's all downloaded programs, and your emotional state is part of that, one of those programs. And people might say, well, no, sometimes I'm happy and sometimes I'm sad and sometimes it's part of your circadian rhythm. When, what triggers that, what, that state of being, what time triggers that, it's all just a cycle though. Not so much when we're young and we're downloading these programs, but if we aren't aware and we aren't staying awake and mindful of who we are and what we're becoming, then by the time, we reach 35, it's all an automatic program. And so what happens is a lot of the times people are blaming the outside world. It's like, this made me mad, that made me mad, this made me mad. It's like, no, actually you have stored anger. And the first thing that you see is through the lens of anger, through the lens of judgment, through the lens of criticism. And I mean, that's just one of many emotions. It could be guilt or shame or, whatever it is. And so, part of my work actually is addressing emotional addictions.
Yeah. So it's like the adapted phase where you're adapting to everything that is coming in as you're shaping your beliefs and having, thoughts, the language of the brain, with feelings or emotions, the language of the body.
Yeah.
And then there's the adopted phase past 35 where you're no longer adapting. You're just adopted into those 80,000 pre-programmed daily thoughts on a habitual basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, I mean, most of my listeners, almost, wide spectrum, but the majority are between the age of 35 and 55 females, and, striving to heal the relationship with food, lose weight, break these cycles of hiding food. That's a common thing. And of course, stress eating, which we talk a lot about on here. And so for them who's listening, I'm sure a lot of people are going, great, thanks, Maria. I'm over 35 and I'm stuck. So
no, well, you're not. I mean, you're not stuck if you're willing to do the work. But most people aren't even aware that they are now operating from patterns. They actually think that what's happening on the outside is affecting the inside, which is to a certain degree. But what's happening on the inside is also affecting on the outside as well. And so. Once you become aware and you have insight to your patterns, and I mean, you can't figure out all your patterns at once. Healing is a journey. But once you're aware and you have some insight to your patterns, you can say, okay, well, is that one serving me anymore? Is it not? And with mindfulness and some persistence and knowing the right tools, you absolutely can change any of your automatic programs that are causing you to end up in the same paradigm over and over again. But sometimes it can be a little bit hard to identify them on your own because the dialogue in your mind or the voice inside your mind that you think is you but is not actually you, for the most part, are these habitual thoughts from the subconscious mind that is actually sustaining the paradigm that is programmed to sustain. And so it's convincing you very, very well but why you should continue doing things the way that you are. And it will always feel, really awkward to do things differently. And it's also hard to see. So that is something that I'm really well trained in. And within a couple of sessions, I'm able to sort of see how someone is stuck in the paradigm that they're stuck in. And then I'm able to reflect that back to them. And then, of course, use specific tools to reprogram them on a subconscious level so that they're able to actually sustain the new programs or the new routines and habits.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. I almost picture like, it's like a horse with blinders on, and it doesn't know if it's in a small room or a giant room or an open field to that degree. And you're just giving enough insight and awareness. And awareness is something that every guest, every person who's come on here, be it an expert or, someone who's gone through a transformational journey and lost, 40, 50, or even 100 plus pounds, has shared that it was awareness of habits, patterns, and the unconscious beliefs that were guiding them without being, again, aware. So that resonates deep for sure. So, someone who's listening who's going, well, I got to start gaining some awareness. I'm aware that what I'm doing isn't serving me. Where do they start?
Well, actually, I would, with that, if someone said that specific sentence to me, I would say, well, no, actually go back and start with the awareness that what you're doing is serving you. And how is it serving you? What is the payoff? What is the reward? What are you getting? Because that's part of the body's recorded, or the subconscious recorded way of getting particular needs, that universal needs met, that must be met. And if you don't realize what food or your habits or whatever it is that you're doing, what the ultimate goal is, then you're never going to have enough insight to think, okay, well, what else can I do to replace, like what can I replace it to get that same goal? Because once, you basically, a craving is basically just something in the environment has cued a particular craving, and then you do a particular routine that gets you a reward. Okay, so the craving is for this reward, but the craving will not subside if you don't get the reward. So one of the big issues is people are trying to use willpower in order to, maintain their conscious mind's goals. And it's like, well, willpower has got a limit, first of all. And second of all, like, you never address the actual craving and the thing that you actually need. And so eventually willpower will fatigue then.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Hebb's Law, right? Or Hebb's Law?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
It's been around forever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm not even really sure if it originates with him, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. So obviously then, addressing the environment, and I think environment plays probably a huge role for most people. What are kind of your go-to tips and suggestions for helping someone create a better environment for them? Because so often people have a spouse or work environment where it's not going to be supportive to the degree that they want and go. So how crucial is environment, and how do you start to shape your environment? Because you talked about the lens and what we bring forth, and I just so spot on. And so I'm sure the two correlate in some way, and I'll let you dig.
I mean, you just asked me like 20 questions.
I know. You're making my brain go like 30 directions. I wasn't
Yeah, you just asked me
I
so
want to know
many
this
things,
and this.
and I was like, oh, I could go so many directions with this.
I know. We have to do a second episode.
We have this sort of false idea that we are separate from our environment, and our environment doesn't actually have any impact on us. And we are part of the whole. All is one. So it's like in the same way that a cell in your body is, its own cell, but it works as part of a unified system, and the rest of the environment will affect the integrity of the cell. So we're the same way, we're part of the whole. So nothing is separate from anything. Everything is interconnected and has an impact on you. And so even my words and listening to my words will, if they resonate with you, will become part of your neurological wiring and might change the lens in which you see things for the rest of your life. So I've now become a part of you. So what you're willing to allow through your senses, through your eyes, through your ears, all your senses is part of your diet. It's part of your way of life. And so we think diet is food and drink, but it's not. Diet originally means way of life. It's everything that we ingest from the world that actually becomes a part of us and has influence on us.
That is such a positive way to use the word diet. It's your way of life. It is more than food. Like, that makes me actually really like the word diet right there. That is so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything that comes into through your senses, like, basically has a effect on you. And I think in a lot of cases, people who feel that they're in a toxic environment, what is actually happening is a boundary issue, is that they are not able to identify when they have had enough, whether that be with food, whether that be with abuse, whether that be with negative energy, or any of these kinds of things, or their unwillingness to set boundaries because they believe that someone will leave them, and they don't believe that they can be on their own, or like insecurities about what they'll do without these toxic relationships or career or whatever it is. So it's I think the first thing I would say to someone who's really feeling that the environment that they're in is actually not a healthy environment for them, it doesn't actually resonate with them, they know it's dark, heavy energy, is find out what is at the root of them being unwilling to set healthy boundaries. So in some cases, the boundaries are too rigid and they don't let anyone in, and they're lonely. So it's a moderation of, learning how to say no when things are not the way that you envision your life, and when they feel toxic. And also we also have to acknowledge feelings, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But the willingness to set boundaries, the willingness to have the mindset that I am here, I am real, my space matters, what I manifest in this world matters, I have power, I have choice, all of these sort of things. And a lot of people are, especially right now in the type of world that we live in, boundaries are a big, big, big issue.
Yeah. It's almost, what I'm almost hearing from it is that, from the aspect of diets and the aspect of boundaries, it's really a conversation of like tolerance and standards, and almost this set point of, if you have high standards for yourself, then you actually have low tolerance for things that aren't beneficial for you in your world and your life, as opposed to kind of this opposite where we think, we need to, be able to stand strong, to endure, to like suffer through the pain. And that's almost like celebrated in these days, in this day and age, and to be able to grit through. And it's almost that willpower conversation. But you set no standards for yourself. Your standards are really low for that. And therefore the boundaries go out the window. And then I'm assuming that's where blame or shame come into play, whether it's external or internal.
Yeah. So it's really hard for me to answer any one of these questions in like
I don't
a
know
really
if they're
clear,
even our
succinct
questions.
way. But,
Yeah.
but just the last question, because it's like, well, yes, and now we're talking about boundaries, but then at the same time, it's what's really important for people to understand is that everything that is currently in your life at this point in time, or at any point in time, is in your life for a particular reason, and you are magnetically attracted to that vibration because of your vibration, and your vibration is a result of how you think and you feel, and that creates an electromagnetic field around you, which actually makes you drawn to certain things and not drawn to certain things. And so sometimes we can identify that something makes us feel bad, but it's actually our vibration that's attracted to that thing over and over again. Sometimes we'll be in a relationship and we know that the relationship is completely toxic, and we keep trying to push that person away, and then we're just like more magnetically attracted to them. And it's because that person actually, those two are actually magnetically bonded to each other to sustain a particular paradigm, to sustain a particular vibration. And so one, it's like having that mindful awareness of like, okay, this is a boundary for me. I don't want this energy in my life anymore. But what about me is magnetically attracted to that vibration as well? That's also important to know as well. So this is why I say, like, it's kind of hard to do the work by yourself.
Totally.
You don't always see it,
Yeah. Yeah. And you said that we're attracting to it, or it's attracting to us, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just continues, and it's almost like we're addicted to it. So it's because it's ingrained in us, going back to that 35-year type
exactly. So it doesn't matter what our relationship, whether it's with food, with another person, basically that relationship is only the way that it is because of the combination of who I am in that thing, right? And so this is why you always see a victim with an oppressor, right?
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't see me with an oppressor because it just doesn't, this is something I'm not attracted to. It's like, what? No,
Right.
immediately.
You're not vibrating that type of
Yeah,
energy.
but if you're a different vibration, then you might actually be attracted to that person. And a lot of times I hear when I'm like trying to explain this to people, they go, well, no, I didn't know he was like that in the beginning. And it's like, consciously you didn't, but your subconscious mind knows. Your subconscious mind knows everything. It's connected to the whole, right? And so this is how two things come together. It depends on the vibration.
Yeah. And so it's just bringing that awareness to the conscious mind and trying to wake it up and
and why am I keep attracting the same thing? And even though I know that I don't want this anymore, even though this is not something that I believe should be part of my standards, why is it? That's really important to know.
So on the same front, then we're attracting those same struggles with food or those emotional patterns with food and all of those things. So like, what do you feel is kind of the biggest struggle that you see and you help people with more than anything else when it comes to food, diet, weight, and all that?
Well, I live in my own little paradigm, right? And so I often do see a lot of the same problems over and over again, especially that are really prevalent now. But when it comes to really, if you really think about it, when it comes to any disorder, the problem usually stems from excess rigidity or chaos. And then when we have a dysfunction, it's like we're bouncing between the two. And usually one breeds the other, because when you swing a pendulum in one direction, it has to swing to the opposite end to the same degree. So I think something that's really prevalent right now is binging. And going from excessive rigidity, which is basically the root of binging. And and it takes me so long sometimes to get through to someone when I'm trying to explain that. They're like, no, I just binge. And it's like, no, there's no way you binge without excessive rigidity. And they don't even see that what they're doing is causing the binging. They think that their excessive rigidity is after the binging. Does that make sense? They think that, oh no, but I'm actually making up for all this binging I did. And it's like, no, you're binging because you're not eating enough for what's going on with you neurologically and biochemically.
Yeah. And it's your body's revolt and saying.
It's your body's revolt. And so what can be really confusing for someone is they'll be like, well, hold on, I'm like 30 pounds, over what I'm supposed to be. And it's like, no, well, your body has a weight set point. So if your brain has increased your weight set point and increased hunger and decreased feelings of satiety, there is a root cause for that. So putting someone on a diet is like putting someone, let's say someone has asthma and you give them breath work techniques. It's like, well, that might momentarily do something maybe.
Sure.
But what's happening is not something that you need to control consciously. There's an something going on in the unconscious mind, in the body. So wouldn't you want to get to the root cause of what's happening and why you have asthma or you're having an asthma attack, So it's the same thing. It's like, well, why has your body, and there's several reasons why it might be, that your brain has increased your weight set point. Now, if you start to control your diet and do believe in the calories in, calories out model or the macronutrient, ideas and all this ridiculous ideas that have been long since disproven, and you start to control and have less and restrict, well, the body and the root cause has never been addressed. Well, the body will just make even more modifications, making you even hungrier, reducing satiation even more, and increasing the weight set point. So it's actually dieting itself and the rigidity that is actually causing most of the problem that I'm seeing now. So trying to get through to people about that is hard, but once they understand that and we bring the pendulum back into balance, that's when most people have a really big leap in their healing.
That's really, really cool. Yeah. The pendulum analogy completely makes sense. So we go too far one way, and it's, again, kind of like your original piece where it was like, it was with good intention to achieve a positive place and to feel confident and probably be in a good space for most people within this, but then it swings too far. And so therefore they're trying
Yeah.
to unconsciously balance.
The really interesting thing is there's different types of constitutions that have different, not only characteristics in the body, but also characteristics in the mind. And the type of person who is attracted to a job of, like, a nutritionist or, a health and wellness guru, or even a teacher or a scientist, or all of these different things, tends to be a particular type of constitution. And that particular type of constitution also has a tendency to have the mind frame, or the state of mind of, if a little of something is good, then a lot must be the way.
Sure.
And so a lot of the issues that we're having right now, I think, when it comes to the health and wellness field and stuff like that, is that we're not considering that some of the people that are teaching, including myself, something I have to be mindful of, lean towards this kind of mindset. And they're just people too. And just because something works sometimes doesn't mean it works all of the time. And the really interesting thing when it comes to life in general is that anything that is true in one instance could, a moment in time, or one little factor, can change the picture just enough that is no longer true anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the most empowering things people can do is stop looking for all of the answers on the outside and start reconnecting with the body. And it's like, does this actually feel right for me?
Yeah.
Leaps and bounds of healing can be done when you start looking inward.
Yeah. No, it's so good. I mean, you're spot on. I mean, we were wrong about fats kind of first, right? If we're looking at it from the scientific standpoint, right? It was this big thing of, like, low fat, no saturated fat, like nothing, right? And a lot of science came out at, saying we're wrong about this. We need some of these healthy fats for our brain. This needs to be done differently. And that was like, we were wrong completely about carbs. And now we're kind of in this weird phase where I'm just waiting for the nutrition industry to bust and be like, oh, wait, new research, we're wrong about proteins. But then it's like going further and going, well, maybe we're wrong about all of it. And we just need to be in tune with, what does full feel like? What does this fuel like in my body? Or,
we were semi-wrong about fats. We were semi-wrong about carbohydrates. We were semi-wrong, and we are semi-wrong about proteins. And we're semi-wrong about everything, because everything has a time where it's good and a time where it's not good. And in nature, everything can either be a nutritive tonic or it can be a harmful substance. And it actually depends on what's happening in that particular being at that particular point in time. And so there's a reason why, when they do studies to prove that it's fats or it's carbohydrates or it's proteins, that they can do studies where they are able to find some validity in that argument. But then at the same time, there'll be another study that not only says that is wrong, but also that advice is harmful, because sometimes this is true and sometimes this is true. And so when you go in a cycle in a year, you'll notice that, okay, nature gives us more carbohydrate foods, and lots of fruits are abundant at that time, and we're really hot and the environment is hot, and these cooling fruits cool us down. And then, we go into winter and we have to have more fats and these kinds of things. And that really helps us with the mucus in our gut lining. And then in the springtime, we get all these cleansing foods, and we actually do a lot of cleansing, and the body is happy to cleanse at that time. And so it's not necessarily, is it fats, is it proteins, is it carbohydrates? They all have a place. They're macronutrients.
Right.
But you can eat too much kale. You can have too much anything, and you can have not enough of anything.
Yeah. Dangers in the dose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And I love the tie to, just understanding from what nature is trying to do for us environmentally and cue us into, if we're willing to be aware. So
we're trying to understand and dissect and control something that's so astronomically more intelligent than us, and it's actually ridiculous. And we are not really remembering to stay humble as we're trying to understand this thing that we can't even fathom what it is that we're understanding. And like, our brains are just way too young to be able to comprehend it. And I think it's the lack of humility and a lack of remembering that there is this intelligence that's much larger than us. And I think it actually stems a little bit from shame and low self-worth, is that we can't admit that we don't know. So the leaders are like that. And then the people that are following are also kind of low self-worth or shame, where they're like, they let an outside source become their authority, and they just give up all of their personal power to whoever's teaching them about health and wellness, or whoever's the latest guru, right?
Yeah.
And there is a wisdom within all of us that is connected to the whole, that is much smarter than any person, nutritionist or any health guru or any scientist, really. And that wisdom has evolved over billions of years, and it controls hunger and satiation. So trying to control that consciously is ridiculous. It's just like, that's not what your conscious capacity is for. The primitive part of your brain that's evolved over billions of years is controlling that, and you're not going to win if you try and go against it. So you can look at yourself and see, like, what's happening within my being that is making me overeat. That is a possibility, but actually trying to control by denying yourself these kinds of things, you're not going to win. Your willpower will fatigue, and the survival instincts will override, and you will binge.
Yeah. So it's a surrendering and a letting go, but also an acknowledgement of patterns and behaviors, and it's trying to get to the root of the cue that is causing the behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the first steps to have some insight, but it's not just our cravings and the cues in the environment. It's actual hunger and satiation at your actual weight set point, which can be influenced by a variety of factors. It can be influenced by the quality of food that you've had over the course of your life. It can be influenced by your perceived level of scarcity, whether you believe that you're beta or alpha. You can be influenced by your chronic stress levels, by all sorts of things, whether you believe that you're powerful, lovable. All of these things actually affect your appetite, and people don't realize that they do, because everything is connected, right?
Yeah.
And so first step is really identifying cues and having some insight towards that, but actually really having to really break free from the paradigm of constantly monitoring what you eat and having to control that all, is to find out why subconsciously your body is storing more than you actually need.
Yeah, that's why they need a coach. They need a guide to go on the journey, for sure. So,
yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I did it on my own, so it's obviously possible, but that was like a 20 some odd year process. And I don't recommend doing it that way. So
yeah, we can do anything on our own, but sometimes we can get a lot further and even faster if we,
I would have loved to have someone who knew what I know now back then, but there wasn't anyone. And it was because we're speaking about a problem that didn't exist so much 100 years ago or 50 years ago. So what I do now is something that I had to kind of invent, because there wasn't a solution to the problem before.
Yeah, I mean, that's where your book came from, is because there wasn't one on it. I mean, it's not like you set out and were like, I'm going to write a book someday. It was like, I can't find the book that I need, so I'm going to compile everything possible, test on myself, and then write a book about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. I was like, where's this book? And it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll have to write it then.
Yeah. So just because we segued there, please share. Yeah.
It's called the Eating Enigma, and it's all really about emotional eating, food addictions, and a lot about, what the cravings are about and how to use some tools to pacify those cravings. I don't get super into like all of the underlying root causes of why someone's hunger and satiation may be a little bit off, or why their weight set point may be high. I do touch on it a little bit, but it's a really great place to start for anyone who is trying to find insight on, why they're not able to lose some weight, or, hit their fitness goals, or actually really any goals, any behaviors that you're like, okay, why am I doing this? And what can I do to get out of this paradigm to, increase my chances of success? So basically is what the book is about. It's just available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Cool. Yeah, we'll link it up in the show notes for people for sure. So super awesome. I do kind of want to know what do people need to elicit lasting change? I know you've kind of touched on it in pieces, but I feel like it's a question that needs to stand alone.
It sounds like such a cliche response, but love. Yeah, I think love for themselves, love in their life, love for their body, love for everything that they do, their past, and integration, because we are single entities, but we don't have single drives. Like, it's not like I, Maria, have one goal in life and that's the only goal that matters. And, I have all these drives, and some of them, well, not really anymore in my case, because obviously I'm aware of this, but in many people's lives, these drives, actually, the programs that we've downloaded over the course of our lives in order to satisfy that drive, or to satisfy those desires, some of them compete with each other, which starts to cause a lot of inner turmoil in people's lives. And people think, oh yeah, I'm a self-sabotager. It's like, there's no such thing as a self-sabotager. Why would anyone sabotage yourself? It's actually
and then you're creating that label, which you're just buying into.
Yeah. I'm very careful about, the words that we use about like what we think that we're doing. But it's actually self-preservation. So there's this one part of you that wants this particular goal, and another part of you that does this other thing because it needs this other goal. But it's like there are other programs or systems or habitual behaviors that can meet the needs of both those parts of you. And do you love yourself and that part of you enough? And do you accept that part of you enough in order to do the work to make sure that both parts are satiated? Because there may be that one part of you that puts a really high value on how you look and how how desirable you are to other people and all of these different things. But then there's this other part of you that needs nutrition. And, does that make sense? But sometimes, because of something that happened in the past and a void in the past, this part is, to a toxic degree, gets the energy. And is willing to do very questionable things that affect the entire rest of the system. Right? So I think when you love yourself and all the different parts of you and all the different parts of your life and all the trauma that you went through, and you have integration of all of these different things, then you yourself can sort of kind of holistically come together and be more whole, and there will be less inner turmoil and less what appears as self-sabotage, but actually is not self-sabotage at all. Yeah.
So, I mean, the self-preservation thing completely makes sense when we're thinking it's self-sabotage. I mean, from everything on a very simplistic level that I've understood, is the brain's main two jobs are, one, to conserve energy, and two, to keep you alive and safe. And if whatever you're doing is still keeping you alive and safe, even if it's smoking every single day and it's not serving you in the long run, if it's keeping you alive now, it's going to buy into that pattern.
No, it must serve you.
Yeah.
It must serve you. Yeah. I mean, for the brain to adopt a habit, there's a reward. There is a need for that substance. And some people might say, well, smoking, like, what is that? Well, it could be anything. It could be from something going on in the third chakra where, you know, there's trapped energy and you need to hold back, and that energetic holding back because someone told you when you were a little kid to keep a secret to yourself, and you're holding the secret, you know, your whole life, and that's stuck, and that's why you're smoking and you're attracted to that vibration. Or a number of things, you know, maybe you were taught that you were a good girl because you never complain, and so instead of expressing your emotions, you hold back, and you know, and that's something that you've attracted because of that. It could be really anything, you know. So yeah, everything does have a purpose, but although it can get to a point where the drawbacks outweigh the benefits, but if there's been no other means of resolving that issue or getting that core need met, then that will be the only program that the self knows how to preserve.
And so that's why you were saying, like, you get to the root, and then you can have awareness of it. If you have awareness precedes change, and then change can actually start to unfold if you're meeting it with love. I mean, the insight is useless without action. So you do have to do the work, and the work is hard, and it can be painstaking, and some people don't want to do that, and some people don't want to go inward, but you know, eventually you'll have to, you know, because whatever it is that you're using to pacify or to cover it up will eventually prove to have consequences, and in the end you will have to look at it all. But yeah. And I think that's spot on. The work is painful, and most don't want to do it, and that's why we have so many different sedation techniques and things happening these days, and that's probably where food is one of them for a lot of people.
For some people,
Very cool. Well, where can people find you? Because I know they're going to want to follow you because you drop such good stuff, and especially on like just the pieces that no one else is really talking about in this regard. I mean, we have, you know, tons of amazing people out there sharing this, but not really in regards to the nutrition and health and that type of space, especially with energy stuff. I mean, one of my go-to things, not to get on a side note tangent, but, you know, clients always get a little annoyed with me when they, you know, they come and I'm like, all right, cool. I want you to go meditate and then come back to me and tell me where you're at. And that's one of the go-to techniques. And then it's always a totally different conversation afterwards because we can get somewhere with it. So just the fact that you're talking about a lot of these pieces was really cool. But taking it back, where can people find you and follow you?
So in the cyberspace world, I go by Nutritionist Maria. So everything, pretty much my website, Instagram, Facebook, it's all social. It's all Nutritionist Maria, except for Twitter, which is Nutritionist Mia, because they couldn't fit it. I'm most active on Instagram. So if you like what you hear, follow me there, send me a message. I'm pretty interactive. So
And I definitely agree. Everyone should follow definitely on Instagram. Social media is one of these things where it can get a negative rap or a positive rap based on, going to our previous conversation, your perception of it and what you're inviting and allowing in. I did a gut a while ago and was just like, Instagram wasn't serving me, Facebook's not serving me, and cut those pieces and was like, oh man, it really is what I was vibrating out and attracting in. And all of a sudden, like, it just became such a positive light, and positive connections came, right? And the right people, like, all of a sudden, like, things were coming in. That's how I found you a while ago, followed for a while, and it's like, yep, the message is spot on. Listeners need to expand and hear upon this, and so I'm hoping that.
I feel the same way about social media. Whenever people say, oh, social media this, social media that, it's like, well, yeah, if you allow your social media to be like that, it's the same as anything else in your environment. I don't feel that way at all about my social media because I don't allow things that don't make me feel good. It's like the second I see something that's just like not a good vibration, I just delete and gone. Right. But I'm very, very mindful, and also have seen the transformation that's happened in my life from being conscious of what I allow in, and so it's been a process for me to get to a place where I'm like, the minute something is just not, I don't want to be exposed to that, then, but I'm, quite like, no. So I don't even have TV or watch the news or any of that. People are always like, what? You don't know what's going on in the news? I'm like, if you were in nature, right? At what point would you ever be able to hear all the disasters that are happening across the entire globe? Like, we're not meant to be bombarded with that much negativity.
Yeah.
You're not hearing all of the miracles that are happening all the way across the world. So, it's just way too much. So yeah, I feel the same way about social media when people are like, oh, social media, this, that. It's like, no, well, you make your social media what you make your social media,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love the nature analogy. It's spot on. I was climbing Mount Rainier about a year ago, and there was like a little rock avalanche that was starting to happen. And we were climbing at night, of course. And so you can't see where this is happening. And so true fight or flight type thing, but you're actually freeze, right? Because you're like, don't move, look and try and find where these rocks are falling and see if I'm going to get ripped off the mountain or crushed or whatever the case may be, right? And then it passes, and we're like, all right, onward. And then you're back to just being absorbed into the beauty of the moment and the mountains and everything. And it's kind of like, that's how it would be ideal to have news in this small dose of like, no, this is something you should actually pay attention to. This is where you actually need to fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, now go back to the serenity and the beauty of everything else that is happening around us in life. And yet when we're not, and we're getting bombarded with that, it's literally like an avalanche happening all the time. So that's why I love
yeah,
nature.
And it's really interesting. It's like, if you're living in a developed country and you're living in one of the most safest times in the history, like, we live in ways, even someone who's not even that, doesn't believe that they're that affluent, is living better than kings and queens could have ever imagined in other points.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous how fearful and how anxious we are, considering how safe and secure we are, right?
I don't know if it's ridiculous though, because first, we don't know any better at some degree because we haven't been taught that there is better than what we've had programmed, right? Like, we need conversations like these to kind of expose that, show us that, and then go on that journey of someone to be like, no, we're ridiculous.
Yes. Okay. So if you've always, lived in a city and had all this stimulation around you and been exposed to all of these things that you are normally exposed to, then yeah, you don't really know anything different. So yes, that's absolutely true. But so if you think about, if everything that basically you think and do and feel is a cue sort of initiates that and sort of triggers a response, and then you do this routine. Well, the more stimulation you have around you, the more cues you have around you.
Yeah.
Correct? So the less in charge you are of your emotional state. You're basically like being triggered by this thing, by that thing, by this thing, by that thing. And so yes, you do need some awareness and someone to bring that awareness to you. It's like,
otherwise you are the victim, the oppressor situation, but with stimulation. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think, that knowing that is really crucial. But yeah, I do think that's really crucial. Yeah. I was going to go on to something else and make it a little bit complicated, but I won't go there. Yeah. No,
it's good. It's good. Yeah. It started out where it needed to go and continued to where it needed to go even further. But to bring it back, like, talking about it, just how social media can be a positive place and inspirational place and still an educational platform. I do want people to follow you there because of what you do put out. So, I can't influence anybody to do anything other than what's their own accord, but I definitely think that they should. So much appreciated for that. So, now we know where to find you. Definitely recommend the book for sure. And I'll link up, website and everything. But kind of circling and ending out, what do you believe is what it takes to truly transform? Kind of summing it all up.
To truly transform, I think a definite decision, right? So if you are trying for something, then you haven't made a definite decision. Right? You don't try to get up in the morning and try to go to work and try to brush your teeth. Like, these are all things that you do. They are part of that is how it is. And so when you're trying to make transformation to your life, it's always going to be a little bit hard because you're not going against what's the normal routine, the normal against the grain. And so I think one of the most important things is like failure is not an option. That no matter how I feel, no matter how what old thought patterns come up, I'm going to keep saying to myself that this is the way. This is what I accept for myself, and this is what I do not accept for myself anymore. And I think one thing that's really important for people to understand that is, like I said earlier, is that in order for the brain to adopt a habit, there needs to be a reward. It needs to feel good. There needs to be a benefit. So if you decide, okay, I'm going to start going to the gym every Monday morning, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go to the gym, and then you go to the gym on Monday morning and you're like, oh, I don't want to be here. And the whole time you think about your boss that you hate and you're miserable and all of these different things, then that routine is not rewarding. So it's not going to be a habit. Every time it comes time for Monday morning, that exact same program is going to keep going. Oh, I don't want to, So coming from the perspective of, if you set a goal, enjoy yourself while you're doing it. Get a pleasurable experience out of it. If you're going to eat food that you like, that you feel good about. Remind yourself that you feel good about it. All of these different things. So coming from the place of love for yourself, love for your body. I am nurturing myself. This is good for me. I want to be doing this. Don't say things like, you don't make friends with salad, or, don't say things like that to yourself, because it's not about what is true and what is not true. It's what is true for how you feel. Yeah. Right? So I don't believe these ridiculous things. I don't believe that unhealthy foods are fun. I don't believe that celebrating requires me to eat junk food that harms my body. Like, I don't have these beliefs. And so I don't feel bad when I don't get birthday cake, because that doesn't exist in my paradigm. Yeah. So it's what you tell yourself over and over again. So when you are making these decisions to transform and you have laid out an action plan, choose an action plan that you're going to like. Okay. Not what worked for your friend and this person.
Right. Oh man.
Right? That doesn't actually add a lot of stress to your life either. Like something that you can sustain and do things slowly, because if you do a overhaul, they're basically you're trying to change a lot of subconscious programs. Eventually your willpower will fatigue because you're trying to do this consciously. So do things slowly. This instant gratification that we're all so addicted to is part of the reasons why we never get the goal in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So well said. Casting votes for the person you deserve to become, and falling in love with the journey so that you can love that person in its entirety.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Maria Ayne, so glad that you came on, aka Nutritionist Maria. So greatly appreciate it.
This is great. I really enjoyed this podcast. Yeah, I'm really yeah. Lovely.
Yep, it always goes in some direction that I never expect. So that's always a beautiful thing.
Me too.
Great. Well, thank you again.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I hit stop. That was awesome. I appreciate it.
Okay, good. I'm glad you liked it. There's a few moments where I was like, I went on a tangent and I was like, wait, I can't remember the original question. And I was like, I'll just stop talking.
No, and I didn't ask specific questions because it was going in a cool direction. And
oh, good. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it because it seems like, you know a lot about the topic yourself, and you've done a lot of your own research and stuff. So I felt like I feel a lot of the times with my podcast, I'm getting a lot of surface level questions, whereas it's like you already knew all that stuff. And so we were able to go a little bit deeper or transcend it or whatever. So
and I've done a basic, I try and have a few basic ones for people that I just did solo, where it was like, understanding calories, macros, energy deficit, and that kind of stuff. Because sadly, like, that episode had, 5,000 something downloads, like, within the first couple of days. I should probably go back and check about what it is. Right. But then these other ones where I'm like, this is the stuff. So I put those out, and then so that I can have these conversations, which is what truly matters. And eventually I know that the wheel will turn, but at least it gets people hooked into stuff. And then they're like, oh, and, so it's all about, I'll have some kind of, emotional eating as part of the title. So it gets people to listen, even though we don't talk hardcore details about some of those pieces. It's
I don't even
understanding that
remember what we talked about, actually, to be honest.
we went
What did
everywhere.
I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you any work with like Joe Dispenza's stuff or
Oh,
Master
that's
Kip
really.
or
So I actually started my personal development journey with DeMartini and Joe Dispenza. I know
okay.
them personally.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so that's sort of where I started. So I'm very familiar with both of their works, and my life kind of just branched out from there. But
Sure.
I had heard you say a couple of things, and I was like, okay, cool. He knows just Joe Dispenza's work. So
Yeah.
that's where I was like, that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to go just a little bit deeper
Well,
here.
when you're like neurons that wire together, fire together. I mean, you didn't say the line, but I'm like, all right, like here we go.
Yeah. So that's good. Oh, yeah. I am very familiar with Joe Dispenza's work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
very cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I took his he has like a 9-week course. I haven't attended any of his stuff.
it. Okay.
But love that. Love the work of like Byron Katie, some of these, kind of
I don't
classic
know
creators.
Byron Katie.
Oh, Loving What Is. That's such a good book.
Oh, yeah. Can you send me the link to that or the thing? Yeah, I'll never
Yeah,
remember it.
audiobook is best because she does do some interviews. She's been around forever.
Hmm.
But yeah, she's got some cool. It's like the simplest thing. Like write down what it is. Find the positive. What's the lesson from it? And
Yeah.
it's classic. But yeah, her
I really love
everything.
Dr. John DeMartini as well. I highly recommend him. But yeah, right now I'm really into like learning about all of Alan Watts and really into Carl Jung's work and stuff. So like I've kind of gone a little bit in that direction.
I haven't gotten into like what do you recommend? Because I'm
Oh,
all for being as open as possible to everything and everything's connected. Like everything you're saying, I was like, I want to ask personal questions, but I know a lot of people aren't in that place yet
oh
and will
yeah, I'm
probably
pretty
be
open. I'm pretty open, and I'm
turned.
also good with boundaries. So I can say, oh, I don't know if I want to talk about that. But my brain is a weird one because, like I said, I'm very into science and I'm very into spiritual teachings and
Yeah.
personal development. So it's kind of like these three worlds that kind of came together. So I've done a lot of research on the brain. Like I study the brain all the time,
Yeah.
but also uh, I'm
Well,
really
that's what made me believe that you knew Dispenza's work and that kind of stuff, right? Was
yeah.
because how you were talking about like the neurological functions. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm also really into Eastern ideologies and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm very into the chakra systems and Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and Taoism
Cool.
and all of that stuff. So it's all sort of an integration of
Yeah.
being able to look at the whole thing holistically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm.
Sweet. Well, this will probably go out Tuesday of next week.
Okay.
Yeah, looking at the time frame. But I'll do a short blurb. For you, what works best as far as like social platforms? So I can do a 1 minute where it's video and we've got title on the top as far as like Instagram goes, and then like words on the bottom where it's playing that way. To segue people over, or just picture with of you, of course, with like name and all the kind of title stuff with the little like wave things for sound and stuff like
You
that.
know what? I'm
Do
happy for
you have a
either
pair?
one. Like if
Cool.
you feel that there's a little snippet that you like and you want to do it that way, sure. If you want a picture, I'll send you a picture. I'm pretty chill. I'm all
Cool.
like
Yeah.
divine will.
Yeah. No, the when you were talking about like the emotional well-being piece and emotional set point, I was like, if I do a cut, that's where it's happening right
Oh,
there.
that's so funny.
Like seriously, I've
I
never
don't
heard
even
that.
remember what oh, really?
Yeah. I was
Oh,
like blown away. I was like, that is so freaking cool.
no, that's
Um,
so good. I'm glad you got something out of it at least.
I, that was good. Cool. And then where else do you like to be tagged on stuff more than anything else? You said IG is your main one,
IG
but
is
anything else?
my main one, and it's probably because I'm so active on it. But
Cool.
Facebook as well. Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah, lovely.
Sweet.
So,
All
do you
right.
want? Let me know if you want me to send you a picture, or if you want to just take
I'll just use that
whatever.
cut. Yeah, I'll use
Okay,
that
perfect.
cut. That'll be
Cool,
great.
cool, cool.
So
Yeah,
sweet.
great.
All right.
Um,
Well, I greatly appreciate it, and
Thank
I'll
you.
be tagging you on all of
Oh
that.
yeah, hold on. Like maybe I'm gonna like take a picture so I can do a little. I can do a little story today and tag
There
you.
you go.
There we go. There we go. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay, sweet.
Sweet.
And I've got you on Instagram, right? We've added each other.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yours is way better than mine. I'm just kind of starting out with Instagram. It's always been
It
just
takes a while.
email. Well, it's like I've never put any effort into it. I'm like, well, I have the email list, I have the podcast, and it's like that. Those have been like the main two. And I owned a gym for 6 years in Pasadena before I moved here, and launching a second one here. So it's always just been different platforms. But I'm like, you know what? I've got to dive into the social media realm and actually put some effort into it, because there's a lot of people that can benefit or be pulled over to the podcast and just gain stuff
Very
from it.
true. Yeah.
So
I mean, the email list is obviously really important, but
yeah.
I actually didn't concentrate so much on my email lists, and kind of regret not concentrating on that so much, and like concentrated a lot on like IG, which was, it's been proved to be rewarding, but
Sure.
yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Awesome.
Growth on everything. So onward.
Keep in touch.
Yep. Sounds good. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.